Welcome everyone to this event tonight. Can you hear? Okay. My name is Leslie Chason and I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I would like to recognize we are in the unceded and traditional territory of Sycus First Nation. For helping us put on this event, the Chamber would like to thank the BC Northern Real Estate Board for sponsoring and Jody Peterson for volunteering for this event, Diadem Promotional Imprinters for printing the posters, NVSS for allowing us to use this facility this evening, the Chamber directors and members for volunteering many hours to organize this event, as well as our manager, Juliana Broker. And we would especially like to thank Robin Work for graciously giving us his time tonight to moderate this forum. For everyone's information, this event is being broadcast live, so we would ask that you turn off your cell phones. So please make sure you do that right now. We all look forward to an informative evening, and I would now like to turn the time over to Robin.
Thank you, Leslie. Can everybody hear me okay? I think I'll do this instead. So, is that too loud now? No? Okay. So thank you, Leslie. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Mayoral Candidates Forum for the District of Vanderhoof. My name is Robin Work, and I'm honored to be your moderator for the evening. I'd like to welcome all the folks who come out here tonight, as well as everyone who is viewing on our live stream at home. Before I introduce our candidates, I'd like to give a quick rundown for the evening on the ground rules and the structure. So each candidate will be given 3 minutes to make their opening statement. The order was determined in a very official draw beforehand. And following that, we will begin the question and answer portion. All questions have been submitted by the general public, and we received many questions, much more than we can handle tonight. So if there are any questions that are coming through on the live stream, unfortunately, we won't be able to accommodate those questions. But what I do encourage everyone is, if you have specific questions, to reach out publicly, privately to our candidates between now and election time. So the order of the questions will be in reverse of the opening statements, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. There will also be rebuttals. Each candidate will have 2 opportunities to provide a rebuttal to another candidate's answer. This rebuttal must be 1 minute maximum. Now, the question and answer portion will wrap up at approximately 20 after 6, because these things always work on time, as you know. And after which, each candidate will provide a 2-minute closing remark. Now, respect and civility are the expectation. Part of my role is to ensure that we have all of us behaving accordingly, candidates, audience, and moderator included. And I will do so with neutrality and fairness. So ladies and gentlemen, in alphabetical order, your candidates for mayor are George Funk, Ken Holden, and Kevin Moutre. You can applaud now. You really took it seriously when I said to be, respectful, and so everyone's afraid to applaud. So our first opening statement, according to our draw, will be from Ken Holden.
It is on. Hello, I am Ken Holden. I want your vote for mayor because I believe the single biggest issue that's facing voters is higher than necessary taxes. Voters in Vanderhoof have seen increases in their property taxes over the last few years. And for business owners, their property taxes have gone way up, spiked up. In my view, property tax increases are totally unrelated to the service level. My message to voters is that continuous tax increases are unacceptable. I am running for mayor because I believe that with the help of Bill Tycrow, Brad Deja, Henry Peason, and Kurt McKee, we can make a powerful team. I also believe that I can lead all of council to hold current service levels and at the same time lower property taxes. I will lower taxes by increasing current revenue sources. Please know that I propose to increase these revenue sources without a single dollar increase in service fees. Just to be clear, our municipal government delivers 7 core services. Let me list them for you. Roads and services, snow removal, drinking water, garbage pickup, sewage treatment, public security and safety, including the fire department, parks and recreation, including the municipal pool. Also, development services, including formulating, consulting, and approving building lots, subdivisions, and bylaws. As your mayor, I will focus on financial issues. I speak with authority on financial issues because I have been a successful businessman in Vanderhoof, running a high-tech business here for 37 years. What is more, I will arrive at decisions on financial matters in an open and transparent way so that you, the voters, can hold myself and council accountable. Unfortunately, this openness and accountability has not been practiced by the incumbents. Some councillors are running for election, have been in office multiple terms, and one mayoralty candidate also has multiple terms as councillor.
Okay, Ken, thank you. That's your 3 minutes. Thank you very much, Ken. And so our next opening statement will come from Kevin Moutre.
It's been my pleasure to sit on council for the past 11 years. And during that time, we've been able to accomplish a lot. We've built a swimming pool, we've built a skateboard park, we've built the VCTT, the Cultural and Tourism Center. We've also partnered and lobbied on bringing the Parkview Place and Aurora Home to Vanderhoof. And on that note, I really hope everybody got a chance to see Minister Cullen's clip from UBCM's speech, where he talks about that as a shining example to the rest of us as what's impossible when it comes to housing. If you haven't seen it, please take a look on my Facebook feed. It's right there. The biggest issue for our community at this time is housing. Knowing that there are a lot of vacant lots, around 70, we've created a revitalization tax exemption. So this is a 5-year tax holiday for new builds. We've heard from developers that they want to build on new subdivisions. Providing services to new subdivisions is either to the north or the south is going to be expensive, and it's going to be beyond what the old model of development pays for development can pay for. I will make sure that we plan out these upgrades and that we cost it out, and then we seek the funding to make that happen. A lack of housing is also a constriction to our economy. A lot of businesses and services that agencies offer can't be delivered because they cannot get the employees. Progressive Employment has 242 jobs on their job board. I'm told that that's more like 280 real jobs. Again, the main barrier there is housing, and we need to make sure that we can house people so they can come to town and fill those jobs. And we should focus on that rather than trying to bring new industries to town. That being said, mining is an industry that we have on our doorstep right now. We need to be ready for it. I've been the Mount Milligan liaison for a lot of years. We need to make sure that we are increasing our numbers out there, getting our workforce ready for mining. And I'm going to work with Centerra Gold and CNC to make sure that that happens. And we have Artemis right on the horizon. It's going to be essential that we get what we can out of that project. That's not just workforce, that's also that we're getting our businesses ready to take advantage of it. We're getting our airport ready to take advantage of it. We need to make sure the whole town is ready. Healthcare is a priority for everyone. We are the envy of every community when it comes to doctors per capita, or every community I talk to anyway. We need to give a hats off to our doctors for doing that. And then we need to work with Northern Health to fill the other positions that are going vacant and stopping us from having the healthcare that we desire. And we also need to look at infrastructure. Both the hospital and the clinic are well beyond what they serve this community. We need to make sure that we replace those facilities with facilities that meet the realities of today. With hospitals around us on diversion, with them having a lack of doctors, we are becoming...
Thank you, Kevin. Time does fly when you're having fun. I know that. So our final opening statement will be from George Funk.
For those that don't know me, I'm George Funk. I was born and raised in Vanderhoof. My first 11 years was spent on a dairy farm in the Prairiedale area. My family has been in the Nechaka Valley for a long time. We have put down deep, strong roots in this community. My children and grandchildren are putting down their roots as well. They live here and don't plan on going anywhere. At the age of 16, I started into the logging and trucking industry, and I've been there for over 5 decades. At age 19, I bought my first logging truck and have been self-employed ever since. At the same time, expanding my land base and farming as a second business. I love the trucking and logging industry and have worked hard to be the best I could, building and developing relationships in the business world. I have a good understanding of agriculture, trucking, log harvesting, and including hiring and employing people. I am still currently active in farming and work together with my family in the forest industry. In the last year, I've taken a lesser role, but my heart is still in it. As I look at serving my community as mayor, my hope is to promote business and opportunity in the Vanderhoof area. I want to see equality for people of all walks of life. First Nations people, people of every culture and ethnicity, and the LGBTQ 1A plus IA plus community. I want everyone to benefit from the opportunities that Vanderhoof has to offer, whether it is in business, owning your own home, or feel a part of everything that happens here. I've had the privilege of making friends and building meaningful relationships with many Indigenous people in Vanderhoof and their neighboring communities. I truly respect and enjoy their friendship. I will continue the strong relationship Vanderhoof has made with Sayakous First Nations and look forward to working with Chief Priscilla and Council. I have been involved in Vanderhoof community through many ways over the years, and now look forward to look for your support as I want to be involved in a different way as mayor. I think I'm your best candidate because of my vast experience and knowledge of the community and area. I encourage everyone to get to know your candidates and to make a well-informed decision of who to vote for. Do exercise your democratic right to vote. See you on October 15th.
Thank you, George. So now we're going to go to the question and answer portion. And as I said before, there will be 2 minutes per response per candidate to each of the questions. And we will start the questions in reverse order from the opening statements, meaning George will go first. So the first question, George, the housing crisis is apparent across all of BC, and Vanderhoof is not exempt. What initiatives will you take to address the housing crisis within our community?
Number one, to make residential lots available. I know there's lots of lots in this community that are ready to be built on, but some of these lots are in areas that nobody would spend $500,000 in building a house and having a house worth $300,000. So we need new development. Some of our infrastructure is probably updated to accommodate new development, but that would be my number one goal, is to prepare areas and lots for that development.
Okay, thank you, George. So next question, or same question goes to Kevin. The housing crisis is apparent all across BC and Vanderhoof is not exempt. What initiatives will you take to address the housing crisis within our community?
As I mentioned, we have been modeling out what we'll take to get more water and sewer out to areas outside of the bowl. I think that is important. I think we need to start a development corporation that can look at helping on the financing side a little bit. What we're finding is communities under 10,000, it's both different rules with Canada Mortgage and Housing and with the banks that it's tougher to get the loans, and it's all around tougher. Assessments also are an issue. The same house in Prince George is assessed at a higher value than it is here, even when you take off the land. That's a problem. We need to work with government on how we fix that and how we go forward.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Ken, I'll repeat the question. The housing crisis is apparent across all of BC and Vanderhoof is not exempt. What initiatives will you take to address the housing crisis within our community?
I hate to repeat myself that easily. Taxes are an important part of when a developer comes here and wants to build a house. First of all, they want to look at what the finished product taxes are if they're going to resell it. And I've heard from countless people that taxes on nice homes are higher than another area like, say, Kelowna or places of that size. And why are our taxes that much higher? So taxes is important, but the plan itself, the community, the council, actually the community plan, there are areas for housing developments. But I question why, in order to develop lots in our community, that other individuals have had to put subdivisions outside of city limits to get lots available for housing builds. So it is council's job to help the person build the house, not to build it themselves. And they can do a lot by removing obstacles to construction of housing.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So our second question, we will begin response with Kevin. So the question is, the official community plan for the District of Vanderhoof provides opportunity for the well-being of all its residents, including Indigenous people, immigrants of color, people with disabilities, and 2 SLGBTQ plus citizens. What steps would you take as mayor to create a more equitable community in accordance with the community plan?
You know, when it comes to both diversity, inclusion, and the real key is that we need to learn from each other and to unlearn what we thought we knew in the past. We need to have dialogue. We need to have people talking. I think you can look at the steps that we've taken in the past council, and I think I would keep that going forward, that we make sure we're always bringing people in. We're always bringing them in and having a conversation. Good Neighbors Committee has done a great job. I think I would like to see them supported more. I would like to see them out front and doing more events. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So Ken, same question to you, and I will stop with the whole intro to the question. I'll just ask that. What steps would you as mayor take to create a more equitable community in accordance with the community plan?
Interesting word, equitable. I believe that that all groups, equitable meaning like lower income housing, I'm going to use that as an example. That's one end of the scale. We need to be addressing that issue. I think that a lot of that demographic, or you will, or the often missed people need to be brought into the decision-making process. It has been mentioned to me that council hasn't always wanted to open their ears to the less privileged part of our community. I think that they're just often overlooked, and I would like to see that addressed. And it nags back at me about housing. You know, low-income housing. We're doing a pretty decent job on our seniors, but I think that there's room for expansion on a lot of fronts with to being everybody have the ability to have a place to stay, because there's lots in here that do not.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And so the final response will be for George, and the question again, what steps would you as mayor take to create a more equitable community in accordance with the community plan?
The big one, the big one in my opinion is to include all people, to treat people equally, to include our First Nations, the LGBTQ community, and all people that are less fortunate than the average. And I think when we do that, I think it will change our community immensely.
Thank you, George. So we're on to our third question here, and we'll begin this with Ken. Our youth are the future of our community. If elected, what actions will you take to hear from upcoming voters as to what their vision for Vanderhoof is?
I have several proposals that I was going to bring forward as mayor, and we've jokingly talked about one. When it has to do with our financial reports, I wanted to even go back into the schools, and I was going to offer a $5,000 prize for the best idea that an economics student could have in our high school. A real prize. They get the money if they can figure out a way to reduce our taxes. Anyway, listening to youth would be involved with spending time within the school system. And I would like to see a mechanism in place with the school district and council.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So now to George, same question. Our youth are the future of our community. If elected, what actions will you take to hear from upcoming voters as to what their vision of Vanderhoof is?
Number one, to hear upcoming voters, to listen to what they have to say. I think for the longest time they haven't been listened to. We call them we call them millennials, and I think that has some connotations that do not sit well many times. They're valued people. They need to be heard. They need to be encouraged. There's opportunity for all of them, and I think sometimes we need to help them see that opportunity and to encourage to pursue those opportunities.
Okay, thank you, George. And Kevin, our youth are the future of our community. If elected, what actions will you take to hear from upcoming voters as to what their vision for Vanderhoof is?
One of the things we've done recently, I was the chair of the Environment Committee. We had a grade 12 student sit on that committee, and it was awesome to get that feedback directly from a youth into committee. And I would love to see that expanded to other committees through council that we're engaging youth and putting them there. It would also be great to have a youth council that sat, and maybe it would be that group of youth that sat on all the various committees that could meet and make that suggestion to council. So it's coming straight from the voice of youth.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So the next question is going to be George, again, as we zigzag back and forth. Our community currently has a number of parents employed as teachers with a high school level of education. Every grade and level of our children's education is critical, and properly educated and trained teaching professionals are a cornerstone of our future. And of course, we have all heard about the shortage of medical professionals that is happening throughout the province. In today's competitive recruiting market, how do you propose to draw in and maintain educated, professional people essential to our community, such as doctors, nurses, and teachers, keeping in mind that this demographic generally seeks out fair, progressive communities with modern values around diversity and inclusivity? George.
I think we need to sell our community to these people. And when they do come here to consider our community, to make them feel welcome, to show them around, to show them our community, not just the downtown, not just the amenities we have, but our area as well, out of town. We drive through Vanderhoof, we see very little. You drive north, south, that's where Vanderhoof is. That's our foundation of this community. And we need to show them that. And the other thing we need to do is make sure they feel welcome and they feel protected and appreciated in our community.
Okay, thank you, George. So Kevin, do you need me to repeat the question? Okay, thank you.
So on a similar note, what I would like to see us do is strengthening what we're already doing. So often when doctors are coming to town to look at the community, they'll get a tour of the town. I've taken a bunch on a tour of the Nechaka Valley Sporting Associations, other interests. So if we can make sure that we connect with the recruiting bodies of those organizations, find out what those people are interested, what it is that's going to draw them to town, and then match them up with the right people in town so they get to see what they can experience in Vanderhoof, what they can love about Vanderhoof. It's working. It could be formalized. It could be strengthened. Let's go forward and not reinvent the wheel.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. And last response to Ken. Ken, do you need me to repeat the question? Okay.
You know, after enough years here of my chiropractor moving away and this doctor and that doctor not offering services anymore, it has been interesting to talk to other people in the medical profession that want to move here. And I hate to go back to housing, but there really are not places of caliber available. There's just not enough places that they can go around and purchase to maintain their lifestyle, for one. We want these people inside the city, yes, but I think a good lot of the ones that are moving here will be outside of district boundaries. I still believe we can make it hospitable to them. I would like to see the organizations, and as mayor, I would make it a more formal liaison between the organizations that they normally draw from. The school district must have, and does have, as I know, organizations that go and recruit from. We can help the people in recruiting teachers, for instance, by giving them tools. I'm not going to say a pamphlet, but I'm talking about a series of things, answer their questions. And if there is a large group of them that are being solicited by these groups, then I think that we should have somebody there.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So the next question is directed to Kevin. What would you do to encourage the municipality to hire more local trades in the building of some of our infrastructure projects around the community? An example would be Parkview Place and the Cultural Center. Both were out-of-town contractors.
Quite frankly, that is out of our hands. You have the Western Canada Free Trade Agreement where we cannot specify that it is local trades. We would love to be able to do that. We legally can't. We're just setting ourselves up for a lawsuit. It is the way it is. We cannot legally do that.
Okay, Ken, do you need me to repeat the question? Okay, it's a short one, it's okay. What would you do to encourage the municipality to hire more local trades in the building of some of our infrastructure projects around the community? An example being Parkview Place and the Cultural Center, both which were built with out-of-town contractors.
I see it as two issues. One is the contractor, and we need to encourage the person, if they are out of town, to use local people, local contractors, as part of their development. It would be worth it while for council to have a person designated. It might be a staff member in our office here, but somebody as a go-to person for the people that are wanting to do a development here. If we're soliciting, that's different. But if someone else is wanting to solicit us, we still need to be able to give them the information of who's available. I've heard it in my own business. Oh, I didn't know you had one of those here. We need council could make that information readily available.
All right, thank you, Ken. And so to George, what would you do to encourage the municipality to hire more local trades in the building of some of our infrastructure projects around the community? Parkview Place and the Cultural Center were both built by out-of-town contractors.
What I see happening is that it does go out on bids, and I think for the most part, local contractors are allowed to bid on these, whether they're on a level playing field, I'm not 100% sure, but I would make that a level playing field, and if outside contractors do win bids, that they would be encouraged to use local people, local merchants, supplies that we have here that are community benefits from everything that happens here. The problem I have, some of these contractors come in and they want to use our best people to do the job. And I think we have qualified people in our area that can do every one of these jobs and do them well.
Thank you very much, George. So the next question, we'll start with Ken, and it's a two-part question here. What is the municipal role in regional, provincial, federal, and Indigenous level of governance? What skills and knowledge do you have that will allow you to advocate for the needs of diverse citizens of Vanderhoof within these layers of government?
Oh,
Yeah, it's a big one.
I'm caught up in the second part. When you look at the larger picture, if you want to call it that, of all of the other government agencies that are constantly putting pressure on council, I believe that I would stand up quite well to the pressure. Not all things that are suggested to us by our provincial and federal governments are worthy of being followed up on or actually implemented. And I do believe that when you work within a group situation or a team, if you want to call it that, I would make those decisions, shall we say, consensus orientated. I would want to bring in all the groups affected by the decisions that councils are going to make need to be represented on council when the decisions are there. So you can see that I have a concept here that is not foreign to municipal government. I've worked with it before, and it can be very successful in including all spectrum, all groups, but they got to be listened to.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So now it goes to George. What is the municipal role in regional, provincial, federal, and Indigenous levels of governance? What skills and knowledge do you have that will allow you to advocate for the needs of the diverse citizens of Vanderhoof within these layers of government?
Number one, I think I have the ability to listen to people, to engage in conversation. And I think we need to, with regional as well as Indigenous, to work together the best way possible to include them in whatever parts, whatever we are doing in our community. Regional and municipal do have to communicate and work together, and we have gained great strides, I think, in the past years to work with Indigenous people as well, and that is probably our number one asset, is to be able to work with those.
Thank you, George. And so now the question goes to... Oh, okay, thank you.
So
Good
I'll
memory.
start closest to home first. Our relationship with SICAs has, I would describe it as flourished over the last 4 years. We have a very close relationship. We talk to each other on a constant basis. We meet quarterly in a formal setting, but we also invite each other to meetings, and we have a very good flow of communication. Regional, our role on the regional district actually supplies a lot of our service. They are taking care of our waste management. They're doing our home inspection. They're doing a lot of services. So the mayor has a seat on that board and very much advocates through that seat on the board. Provincial, we just got back from UBCM. We met with 7 ministers plus the premier. We have an excellent working relationship with the province. We had great meetings. We have a lot of support. We've been very successful in convincing the province of showing them what our needs are and getting them to follow through on that. Federal is tougher. We're further away from the federal government, though luckily we actually get less services from the federal government. So it is again a lobbying position, but we need to make sure we're getting our way there. But the other levels of government are where we have closest alliances.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So for the next question, it will start with George, and this one's super short. What can Vanderhoof do to reduce our local carbon footprint?
Drive less. There's a lot of things, I guess. I think our landfills are probably one of these things. You know, we do sort a lot of garbage for recycle, and unfortunately, often these things don't get recycled. And I think we can support. Well, there's many things that we could do to improve that. I can't even begin to name them all, but I think our driving habits would contribute a lot to it. And, you know, of course, burning is another thing, but we do not have many alternatives for getting rid of our waste, wood waste, and any other ways. So other than that, I really can't say much to that one.
Okay, thank you, George. Kevin.
It definitely is a tougher issue in the north. I mean, you'll see the provincial government's pushing heat pumps, and it's tough to get a heat pump that's going to work for you below -20. Well, if it's below -20, you don't want your heat to give out. They are coming up with innovative solutions, so you can now get a heat pump that has a gas backup. So it's all in one system, but it switches over as time goes on. I think, as George says, I think vehicles are key now. It was neat to see a news article the other day about some guys working on an EV logging truck. I'm not sure how you power it up when you're out in the bush, but those innovations are coming along, right? As batteries increase in their capacity, we're going to be looking at that place. And you can look at the fleet trucks and that. How can we downsize? You look at maybe a guy like me. Do I need to drive a diesel truck? You know, maybe you could get away with something smaller. We can work on that and do our part towards reducing our carbon footprint.
Ken, what can we do to reduce our carbon footprint?
Well, a lot of it's been covered. You can look at vehicles. I don't expect in my lifetime to own an electric vehicle, but that doesn't mean that there's not a place for them, particularly in deliveries and very short things. I think as delivery vehicle, they're a natural. But there's other things we should look at. I've been hearing in several different places about the fact that we could put in a sewage treatment facility here that would generate bioenergy. This technology is not as rare as what I first thought. I would entertain as mayor that perhaps we can find a partner to look at bringing that to town, and the byproduct is sellable. And so there is some long-term recovery. I really believe in that kind of technology that's out there and that we can start to implement, and it will indeed affect our carbon footprint.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So now we move on to our next question, and we will start this one off with Kevin. The District of Vanderhoof is situated on the unceded territory of Sycas First Nation. What do you understand about reconciliation, and what actions would you take toward meaningful reconciliation with Sycas First Nation?
You know, we grew up thinking that we understand how things happened here in not too distant past when we went to high school. You go out like we did, you know, on Friday, and you listen to stories, and we've heard them before, but you listen to stories and you see the pain and anguish of what happened, and you just realize how far we have to go yet. We need to learn from the past, and we need to learn the deep hurt that was caused. And we need to look at what happened. I mean, people were taken off a land base and given no say over it, and that isn't right. And we have to then accommodate how we have that voice return to the land base and how we work and move forward together. Really, it's about listening, understanding, and moving forward.
Thank you, Kevin. Ken? Sure. The District of Vanderhoof is situated on the unceded territory of Sycus First Nation. What do you understand about reconciliation, and what actions would you take towards meaningful reconciliation with the Sycus First Nation?
I've had a chance to think about this for decades since I've been here. My whole company philosophy developed itself on being receptive and open to treating everyone equal. That included the Native customers, and my customer base was huge in that particular regard because I did treat them exactly like everyone else. And I'm not sure that by and large they expect special treatment. I question what council would do other than being extremely open to dialogue with them, maybe even a joint project. I thought that was going to happen some years ago. Make them part of us, meaning council, on a regular basis, and not to be afraid of going forward with new ideas with their leaders. And there are some awesome people to work with there, and they would be beneficial to us on our end of things.
Okay, thank you. So final response to that question will go to George, and I'll repeat it. The District of Vanderhoof is situated on the unceded territory of Sycus First Nation. What do you understand about reconciliation, and what actions would you take toward meaningful reconciliation with the Sycus First Nation?
Number one, I find to build a relationship with them is so important. And the only way you can do that is to listen to them. I have even recently listened to some stories of residential school experiences. And I honestly cannot understand, even in part, what these people actually went through. And healing is going to be everything to be able to build relationships with these people. And in order to build relationships, you have to try to understand, listen to them, and sympathize with them. I have built many good relationships with these people, and they're hurting. And all I can do is to hurt with them and feel for them.
Thank you, George. So the next question is actually related to an extent, and we'll start off with Ken. What calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission will be important to you in your work as an elected official? Okay, I can repeat those for free. What calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission will be important to you in your work as an elected official?
Well, I know what, if I was on the other side of the table, I would want the opportunity to present my culture to more and more people. I have been involved and in part of different Native ceremonies, and I still think that the majority of people either they just don't take the opportunity when it's presented. I would bring those opportunities forward. If I was mayor, I would really enjoy being part of that, because I certainly have enjoyed every time that I have been part of any of those type of situations. And it is a wonderful experience that I wish that everyone in this room could have taken part of or been part of. And unfortunately, they're more in the Fort St. James area, but rest assured, you will gain more. If I get a chance to do this, you will gain so much from being exposed to their culture on a different level than maybe you have already. So as mayor, I want to bring that opportunity to you.
Thank you, Ken. So now I'll ask that same question of George. What calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission would be important to you in your work as an elected official?
To understand, I think more than anything is the intergenerational trauma that they've experienced. And to bring back a sense of community to these people. They lost family members. They got taken away from them. The experiences that they had was, I can't even describe it, you know, the pain that they must have felt when losing some of these children to residential schools at a very young age. And the only thing that I can say is that we have a long ways to go to make these wrongs right. Yes, this generation didn't do that, but our country did, and we are beneficiaries of this country and the opportunities that we are able to experience here. And I would like, most of all, for them to experience and have those same opportunities.
Thank you, George. Now over to Kevin.
Okay, I've read all the calls to action, but I do not have them memorized. I do know there are a bunch that have municipal government along with the senior provincial and federal government on them that have to do with inclusion, that have to do with bringing people in and having people heard. And those are the ones I would do. One thing I would put out there, a current practice that we started is I had suggested to council that on committee of the whole meetings, we put 3 calls to action at the beginning of every committee of the whole meeting. So that way you work through, you read, and it becomes living. It's not a whole book, so you're not getting lost in it. But if you can reflect on a few calls once a month, then I think you move forward.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So our next question will begin with George. Being that the world is still figuring out how to live with COVID, if we are asked to mask or any other form of social distancing, what will your stance be on that? Will you lead by good example and encourage others to do so as well? Will you support our medical doctors in this community?
Absolutely all of those, but we don't make the rules and regulations locally. They are federal, and they're based on scientific evidence that they have come up with. So I would definitely follow the rules of the federal government, whatever they are. I would support and protect, like I said earlier in my introduction, I would totally support and protect our medical staff. They are trained people. They are professionals. I didn't go to that extent of education to have that knowledge. So I would go to them for everything else. Why would I not go to them for advice on this?
Okay, thank you, George. Kevin.
Absolutely, yes. These are provincial and federal mandates. You follow what they do. We do not have the expertise to even question it. That's just beyond what a municipality has. We should be looking out for each other. We should be keeping each other safe. And if we're asked to do something, then we should be doing it, and we should be respecting each other.
Thank you, Kevin. Over to Ken. So I could repeat? Okay. Being that our world is still figuring out how to live with COVID, if we are asked to mask or any other form of social distancing, what will your stance be on that? Will you lead by good example and encourage others to do so as well? Will you support our medical doctors in this community?
I'm perplexed because I didn't realize this was still the huge issue that you're stating here. I have been confronted with the decision of doing legal things and illegal things in the past, and I've always sided to do the legal things. And sometimes we make decisions, as I'm thinking of council here, when we were worried, as stated by the previous mayor, that we would lose $1 million in funding if we did not follow the mandates. And other communities in British Columbia and Alberta did not and lost their grants and funding. Truth. So they took a stand against what's right and what's wrong. I'm not a scientist. I would support the medical community wholeheartedly. And it makes my heart ache because I've had my own doctor tell me almost, it was almost in, I would say in tears, it was a very serious thing to have to deal with COVID. That isn't a light thing. People have died, and a lot of people have lived. And I question whether certain mandates have not had more serious ramifications on the negative side in the midterm. We're not long-term yet in the science and the information we're getting. So that's a tough call, but I sure want more information before I have to make that call.
Okay. Thank you. So our next question, we are going to go, we'll start with Kevin. And this is a nice simple one. What do you see as the biggest challenge for Vanderhoof's future?
I think, as we've mentioned, it's housing. Everything comes right back down to housing. We need to have somewhere to put a workforce. We have over 250 jobs in Vanderhoof right now, and the main barrier there is housing. First and foremost, when I'm mayor, housing committee, get ready. You're going to be working your butts off from day one.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm next?
Yeah, over to Ken, yeah. Would you like the question repeated?
No, I don't think so. What is our biggest challenge? Well, I can rattle on again about taxes, but I'm not going to. I would say that if there's an obstacle that I've detected and noticed and going to comment on a lot, it's the fact that information isn't coming out from council. The obstacle is to get communication to all people, even those that might not necessarily be able to handle some of that information. It's, they may have to ask it to be explained to them that they still deserve, as taxpayers and as voters, they deserve to have it explained to them, not merely glossed over as if we know exactly the right thing to do. And that complaint is a lot more widespread than our current council members actually know. And when you have an open and transparent council, but not just the finances, although that's big, there's lots of other issues that I would like to see the public involved in. One of the bigger ones is the bid system and the opening of bids and the celebration of bidding process. And I don't believe it should be secret. And there's just been far too many secrets.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And so the final response, we'll go to George. George, what do you see as the biggest challenge for Vanderhoof's future?
To find people to fill the job vacancies is our biggest challenge to this point, but stems from other problems. Like Kevin said, our housing shortage is a big one. Our infrastructure is another one. We have industry coming into town. We have industry downsizing in town. Our forest industry, we know, is not going to be what it was 5 years ago. It'll be downsizing. So we have many challenges: how to accommodate new business, how to develop new business, and to be able to accommodate and find people to fill these positions. If we don't have people to fill these positions, we don't have a forward movement in our economy here.
Okay, thank you, George. So the next question, you have to bear with me here, it's a rather long one. This question is regarding vicious dogs and bad dog owners and the fact that there are no bylaws restricting vicious dogs in town and fining owners for dog attacks. My dog was viciously attacked this past June by 2 pit bulls while she lay sleeping in our driveway. They nearly ripped her tail right off. The owner of the pit bulls paid the vet bills in payments, but refused to put them down, leaving our neighborhood still vulnerable against another possible attack. quite possibly attack my dog again and finish what they started. So I have two questions regarding this. Number one, will you be looking at hiring a bylaw officer in Vanderhoof? And number two, will you also be enforcing some long-awaited dog bylaws? And so to begin this one off, we start with Ken.
Thank you. Boy, that's been a problem here in all my 30 some, nearly 40 years here. Dog control is, the real problem is who you gonna get to be the dog catcher? There are people that have quit their jobs with the district works department. Everybody knows this in town, just simply because part of their job was to be dog catcher. I think a designated dog catcher, a person whose sole responsibility, along with maybe some administrative stuff, but somebody who can handle that is an answer to that. The bylaws have to be enforced. There's no point in having the dog bylaw if you don't enforce it. So how do you go about that? As mayor, I would entertain that we get more severe and definitive in our enforcement. There should be a mechanism where we not necessarily go through council every time, but there should be a process to remove dogs from the system. I don't know the legal ramifications. I would want to study that. But if a dog continually is being a nuisance in that regard, and maybe even killing other dogs, I say it needs to be dealt with through bylaw.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And over to George. George, I'll skip the preamble and go right back to the questions. Will you be looking at hiring a bylaw officer in Vanderhoof? And also, will you be enforcing some long-awaited dog bylaws?
Absolutely. I'm a dog lover, love my dogs, but when dogs are not well behaved, usually it's because they're getting a lack of attention. And I think if you don't have time for a dog, you shouldn't have a dog. Dogs barking all night in the neighbor's yard is not acceptable. We get enough complaints about the train going through town. We don't need complaints about dogs. So I think probably start issuing some heavy fines. And if that isn't a deterrent, then get rid of dogs for them. And we need a bylaw officer that deals with that.
Thank you, George. Kevin.
You bet. And just to be clear, right now we do have an animal control bylaw that would cover this dog, and we do have a contracted animal control officer. So those are in place. But that being said, to answer the rest of the question, yes, I support having a bylaw officer full time. Right now, staff are working on a ticketing bylaw. That's the first step, because you need the club before you have somebody wield it, right? So they're working on that ticketing bylaw, and then afterwards, I believe we should be hiring a full-time bylaw enforcement officer that can enforce our bylaws.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. So things are going a little faster than planned, because we were expecting some rebuttals, but you guys are just so agreeable and civil that we haven't had to worry about that. So kudos to you. So for final question, now we've talked a lot about housing. This question is more to homelessness and vulnerable populations. So I'm going to read this question out, and George will get the first response. So we are currently experiencing a shortage of housing solutions in our community to satisfy a variety of needs. For example, persons experience or on the brink of homelessness, persons fleeing domestic violence, persons relocating for work. As mayor, how do you propose to address sustainable solutions to this problem, especially since it affects more vulnerable members of our community, and the lack thereof prevents much needed professionals from serving in our community?
Homelessness is an age-old problem. I don't think there's a one-answer solution to that. I think we can show compassion to some of these people, and some of these have received that and have not accepted that well. they choose to be homeless, some of these, and others that don't, they would accept help when offered. So I'm not 100% sure how to answer that one, if there is a right answer for that. But I think there should be accommodations available to those that flat don't have a place to go and choose to be a part of this community.
Okay, thanks, George. Over to you, Kevin.
I'm going to watch a little bit what I say, because we have been talking to BC Housing about finding both transitional housing and some low barrier housing. I'm not at liberty to say what those discussions are, but those discussions are ongoing, and we're hopeful that we'll have solutions in the near term. For relocating to work, one of the things I would really endorse is, as we see more housing units come on, I would like to see the district, Northern Health, the school district, some of those that are often bringing people in to relocate for work, to team up and buy some short-term housing, because really you need a place to land to get on your feet. And then you could have that as a housing stock and really target that housing to help people come into the community, get their start. They can be there 6 months, then move on to a more permanent solution.
Okay, thank you. And final response, Ken. I will repeat the question for you. No? Okay.
I made a little bit of a hint that this has been a priority of mine for quite some time. If I get to be mayor, the only thing I would add to Kevin's comments, and he's right, there's all the different agencies that are working against us. So I would suggest that we get a little proactive with them and make sure that we know when they're doing this. That's council's job. To get that communications, we need to know the numbers and what kind of services. I went through the list. What is the council supposed to do? One of the things we need to do is try and find out how they expect us to do this. What is it they expect of council? I'm thinking of the other social agencies. You're bringing people in on a temporary basis. And I say, okay, here's council. What are we going to do about this? How are we going to do that? And that's how I like to solve problems. I don't always have the answers, but I can tell you I can work with different groups of people to bring a informed, open discussion that the public can be involved in as to what it is we're going to be doing.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So, Michelle, I'm going to ask you a question now. Yes, you. Yeah. I know that you're not running, but we're a bit ahead of schedule by about 10 minutes. And I'm just wondering, have any more questions come in that you think, no? No questions. Okay, all right. Okay. So I guess then what we'll do is we'll move on to the closing statements, and we'll be able to wrap this up just a couple minutes earlier than planned. We can take, I suppose, a question from the floor. It's not okay with you, Michelle? You're the boss.
We hadn't planned on it because you guys talk so fast. I suppose.
Okay.
Fine, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So one question. We'll start with one question from the floor, and who's got their hand up? Okay. You were here. You were one of the first people here earlier today. So yes, you. So if you can stand up and ask the question, and we'll begin this one with Kevin. Okay, I guess I have to apologize here. One thing we have to do in the interest of fairness is make sure that it's a question all three candidates can answer. So I'll invite you to rephrase your question if you'd like. So it's something that all three would have an opportunity equally to answer. That's an excellent question.
So
Kevin.
can you repeat it? We didn't hear it.
Okay, so the question is, what will you do to increase the daycare seats within Vanderhoof? That's fair rephrasing, is it? Okay.
Okay, well, I'll start with what we've done. Partnering with the Y has been awesome. Bringing them into town. We bought the old Integris. We fixed it up. We have daycare in there that created a whole bunch of spots. Moving on, getting $5 daycare at the Y was a huge thing. I mean, $5 daycare is amazing. Going back when I was that age, that would have made a huge difference to me. Usually you're a young adult and there's not a lot of money to go around. Moving forward, we need to find more space, and more space isn't easy to find. We already have daycare in churches. We already have daycare all around. But I will try and find that space and try and work with our provider to expand it.
Thank you, Kevin. And Ken, what will you do as mayor to increase daycare seats within Vanderhoof?
Well, I don't need daycare anymore, but I definitely believe that there are an awful lot of young professionals that would use it. I know it's been said to me many times, people coming into town won't come here if they don't have daycare. We're talking some pretty quality people, some banking people that I have had run across my sphere of influence. They say, well, you know, I got the job. I've got a good job here, but my wife, we've got 2 kids, and she's the major breadwinner in the family. We just can't seem to find a daycare for them. And I don't know how many places, Kevin, are out there right now, but I could say you could easily double just based on what I hear in say 2022. So as mayor, I would look at an outside corporate for-profit organization to fill the need in a short-term basis.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So George, last response here. What would you do as mayor to increase daycare seats within Vanderhoof?
It would be nice if more private people would venture out into providing daycare. That would be the preferred for many parents. I do realize that. But like Kevin says, we are limited for space around here, and we are short of people to provide this service for that. A daughter-in-law here a week or 2 weeks ago, she said too, we need people, qualified people, and she made a list or mentioned a few things of what qualifications they needed. And I said, well, I guess the only people that I would call them mums, what she described. So I guess that would be the number one goal, to have mums do this, but it could be mums in private homes that are able to accommodate some of these employees that have children.
All right, thank you very much, George. Hang on to that microphone, because now we're caught up on our schedule, and we're going to go ahead with our closing remarks. So each candidate will have 2 minutes for their closing remarks, and doing it in reverse order. So we will begin with George Funk.
Thank you for being here to listen to us and get to know us better. I believe I am your best candidate choice for mayor for the reason that I've mentioned in my in my earlier debate. In conclusion, I wanted to reiterate a couple of things that are very important to me. Number one, I deeply respect and value First Nations people for their culture, for their beliefs, for their partnerships. And recently, I was talking to a residential school survivor, and the kind of experience he went through is horrifying. The pain that parents of those children must have felt is more than I can imagine or understand. I promise to continue working hard for our First Nations people to promote healing and intergenerational trauma and a sense of community. Second, to embrace the youth of today. I want to make sure that our youth feel valued in our community. We know that the younger generations is leaving Vanderhoof at a faster rate than we would like. To fix this, I think we need to listen to our youth and find ways to retain them. Listening is key. Thirdly, I do my best to protect and support our healthcare workers and our first responders. I know that our healthcare workers were burnt out from the pressure that they got from certain sections of our community, the harassment, the criticism they were subject to. And I think that that is absolutely unacceptable. I will work as hard as I need to make sure our healthcare workers
Thank you,
feel
George.
safe and are valued.
Sorry for cutting you off, George. That was your 2 minutes. So, thank you, George, and over to Kevin for your closing statement.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I can fit my last card from the opening statement in now. So it was, reconciliation, diversity, and inclusion are very important to me and to the progress of our community. All members of our community should feel safe, welcome, and valued. We all have gifts to offer and contribute with. I will continue to work hard on learning, unlearning, and bringing people together. Over the last 4 years, Council's relationship with SICA's Chief and Council has flourished. I pledge to keep making it better and better. Now on to the closing. I think you've heard 3 very different visions of where our community should be going tonight. I'm here to tell you why my vision is taking the community forward, and it's the only way to go. I believe someone running for mayor should be ready to commit to run for 3 terms. I'm here to say I'm ready to serve in this role for those next 12 years. I'm looking forward. That puts me to a couple of months shy of 60, but I think I'll still be full of vim and vigor there and ready to go. As a lot of you know, I've been in leadership positions both locally and provincially. Over the past few years, I've been planning and timing my commitments to end this year. My son, Will, has taken over the management role at my business. I'm all in on seeking this position, and I'm set up to focus my time on Vanderhoof's needs and on opportunities. I've got the plan to get us there. I've got the knowledge and experience gained from 3 terms on council. I know the issues, where we're at now, and the path forward. I'm so excited with what the next 4 years will bring for us. I can't wait to take on this role.
Thank you, Kevin. Our final closing statement will be Ken Holden.
Well, I can't say that I'm so happy with how things have been. I'm going to talk about secrecy. The current mayor and council have been making major financial decisions in total secrecy. The major reason for the secrecy is that the folks just don't believe that they're just not accountable to the voters of Vanderhoof. I would like to ask the incumbents, all except 2 are running once again, as to why, for all these years, have they been hiding stuff from us? Did you know as voters that Vanderhoof underwent a serious forensic audit? Did you know why the news of this serious forensic audit was hidden from the voters? You don't. Do you know what event caused the forensic audit? What exactly happened at the district office that caused the audit? Did you as voters know that the mayor and council were major financial bunglers when they turned away a sizable, non-repayable private company grant to help with sewage treatment here? I didn't think so. Of course, neither you nor anyone else outside of the narrow elite circle of elected officials knows about the major bungling of that. Once again, the incumbents tried to hide this news of their financial incompetence from the voters of Vanderhoof. Oh, I'm not up yet. I have more. Did you, as voters, know that revenue...
And that's time. Thank you, Ken. So that wraps up this portion of the All Candidates Forum for Mayor tonight. So just some notes here before I let you all take off. Eligible voters may cast their ballot at the Friendship Center on Victoria Street between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. on October 15th. Advanced voting will be held on Wednesday, October 5th from 8 to 8 at the municipal office on Connaught Street. For more information about this, you can contact the municipality. Now, on behalf of the Vanderhoof Chamber of Commerce, thank you, candidates, and the Northern BC Real Estate Board for sponsoring. To our volunteers, thank you. And to our audience, both here and at home, thank you very much for coming out. If you're interested in sticking around, the council forum will begin at 7 o'clock sharp. In the meantime, I encourage you, if you still have additional questions for our candidates, to seek them out and ask the questions directly to them. So again, thank you very much and have a good evening. We'll be back at 7.